I'm Lola.
I'm Emma, and together throughout the Seven Kingdoms, it is known we three are the NerdStreet Hoodlums.
The notorious Lady Nerd Gang, here to give you unadulterated opinions on all things lady and nerd culture. April 1964 marked the first non-costumed appearance of Natasha Romanoff in Marvel's Tales of Suspense number 52 with art by Jack Kirby. 5 issues later, she would recruit Hawkeye to her cause, but it wasn't until 1970 when she would don her trademark Black Widow suit, which, by the way, still totally works.
I've seen worse.
As of Sunday, April 6th, Game of Thrones has officially returned to HBO. The show, based on the epic fantasy book series by George R.R. Martin entitled A Song of Ice and Fire, has been a real game changer for the HBO network, with Season 3 boosting revenue by 4.4%. In fact, Game of Thrones is so successful that HBO is apparently considering experimenting with new ways of bringing their content into consumers' homes. In other words, we may soon be able to enjoy HBO Go without stealing our parents' passwords. Since we all love Game of Thrones, and we'd totally lose any and all nerd cred if we didn't do an episode dedicated to it, today will be all about the series that George R.R. Martin, whose background is in TV writing, was inspired to write after being told repeatedly that his television episode scripts were unproducible.
Today I want to talk to you about the character arc double standard. To go with today's theme, I've picked 2 Game of Thrones characters, Jaime Lannister and Sansa Stark. When we first meet Jaime Lannister, what a douche. He fucks his sister, he killed the former king by stabbing him in the back, he attempts to murder a child by pushing him out the window, he's super rude to Ned Stark, but then, later on, we kind of learn some history about Jaime. We start seeing why he operates the way he operates, and he grows into something way more multifaceted. Sansa Stark. When we meet her, super naive, precious little angel baby. But as horrible things start happening to her and she kind of becomes awake to the world she lives in, she becomes such a sass mouth and can play the game better than most people. So why is it okay for Jaime Lannister to have lairs, but we have to throw Sansa Stark under the bus? How dare she be a teenage girl with a personality and feelings? See how it doesn't really work?
Game of Thrones is currently literally taking the entire world by storm. Hugely popular on HBO. Now, I think that one of the reasons that Game of Thrones caught on so much, and I know the reason that it really resonated with me and made me want to read all the books in the series after reading the first one, is that the characters are so complicated. No. They're so not black and white. In another universe, there is no way, or there's a very slim chance that Tyrion Lannister would ever be anybody's favorite character. The Lannisters are sort of presented as being bad guys, and Tyrion, you're introduced to him and you almost sort of think of him as being a bad guy just because he's associated with this family, and then very quickly you learn just how complex this character is, and from him on we sort of see like a domino effect of like everyone's so interesting.
I believe also the reason that Game of Thrones resonates with people is the fact that every action has consequences, and the writer himself is almost at the mercy of the character's choices. When Robb Stark makes the choice to go to the Red Wedding, as the writer, he has the potential to be like, and then backup arrived, and they fought their way out, and it was fine. But the character makes the choice to go to a situation that is a terrible choice, and in a brutal world, sometimes the consequences are terrible.
It's true, all of his consequences are realistic.
They are.
The hero doesn't come in and save the day.
No. Ned doesn't get ambushed outside of Winterfell taking a walk. He trusts someone he should not have trusted. Yep. There's also a really interesting fan theory that I heard on Tumblr. Sansa is essentially a metaphor for the viewer. Because Sansa thinks that Loras is this fantastic knight, and if she does the right thing, everything's going to be fine. And as the viewer, we thought the same thing. We think her stories are silly, but at the same time, we assumed that someone was going to shoot the axe out of the executioner's hands, and Ned was going to fight his way to freedom. And we are all essentially kind of like Sansa. We all believe in the typical fantasy stories of knights and heroes, and the good guys always win, and the bad guys are always bad. Yeah. And just like Sansa, we are just slowly being traumatized until we are adults.
What we have to accept in the Game of Thrones universe is there aren't good guys and bad guys. There are just people. Some of them have more noble intentions and consider other people, and other ones are, definitely out for themselves. But the fact of the matter is, everybody thinks that they are right.
Yes.
And in some way, everybody is right. Even Cersei, who I think is painted to be this extremely villainous character, she has this great moment. She basically explains how she wound up married to Robert Baratheon.
If you look at a lot of the female characters, the success that they had in their lives, how well things go, it's all at the mercy of marriages that were arranged for them. Daenerys was forced into a marriage. Cersei was forced into a marriage. Lyanna was going to be forced into a marriage. Catelyn was supposed to marry Ned's brother.
Yeah, Brandon.
And when Brandon died, they said, "You're going to marry Ned now." And she said, "Oh, okay."
Okay.
And her sister got married to a much older man and went crazy.
But at the same time, I think there's an argument to be made for what the women themselves are making out of their marriages.
Absolutely.
Daenerys could have recoiled in fear and, been a shrinking little violet and never thrived in her marriage to Khal Drogo.
Right.
Absolutely.
But instead, they formed an incredible partnership, and she came out being a fucking badass after he died.
True.
I do think Cersei was dealt a bad hand of cards with Robert Baratheon, but she probably could have made some different choices.
She could have made it better.
Thank goodness we have Dorne, where marriages don't count for anything.
Woo!
And you can just be somebody's,
fuck puppet.
Yep. And you can live in the palace, and so can your children, and you can all have a great life. And if you have daughters that are illegitimate bastard daughters, they can be queen. If they're the oldest, automatically they're the queen. You've reached the end of this episode of the NerdStreet Hoodlums. As always, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to our channel, get your social media on, follow us on Twitter at NerdStreet, find us on Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram.
This week's bonus footage is our first official installment of The Game of Thrones. Last week, I mentioned that we would be keeping score of how much badassness our ladies are doing this season, and at the end, we will tally said badassness and crown the victor, the Dame of Thrones. And to help us do so, I made a chart.
If you have any questions, comments, or your vote for Dame of Thrones, send a raven to our comments below, and we will see you and all of Westeros next week.
Spoilers, 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 spoilers. Hey everyone, welcome to Dame of Thrones. And in case you couldn't guess from the song, there will be spoilers for the previous episode of Game of Thrones. So this week we're starting with the season premiere of season 4 entitled Two Swords. We'll start off by talking about Marjorie. Good episode for Marjorie. However, if I could, I would actually cross out Marjorie's name and cast my vote for Lady Olenna, her grandmother.
Nana Tyrell in the his house.
I felt like this week, when there was the scene where Marjorie and she were picking out the necklaces, Marjorie seemed to be less interested than Grandma was in getting the throne. Don't get me wrong, I think Marjorie is still a very, strong character, and she does really want to be the queen. But part of me in this episode made me go, does she really want to be queen, or does her family really want her to be queen?
Yeah. No points for Marjorie.
No points for Marjorie, no. Let's talk next about Daenerys. Not a great episode for Daenerys.
No. But she's on her way to do some cool shit.
Yes.
She's losing control of those dragons, though.
She is.
It is true.
She's losing control of those dragons, and she's finding out very fast that the slaves are not really a fan of her. The people in the mother slave city of Meereen know that she's on her way, and so they strung up slaves and made them point the direction all along the way.
Once she, jacked stuff up in cards and then completely took out Astapor, I think she was secretly hoping that people would just, start handing their slaves over, because they're like, don't burn our houses! But that's obviously not going down right now. So,
No.
So no points for Daenerys.
No points for Daenerys,
But I
also.
think my girl's gonna get some later.
She's
I have
been
hope.
low before and she's come back.
Right.
It's true. Next, we'll talk about Cersei, and if I could take points away, but Cersei doesn't have any right now because nobody has any.
Negative points
I
for
would.
Cersei.
I'm giving her a -1 anyway.
This was a terrible, terrible episode for Cersei. Basically, she estranged her greatest ally, which was her brother, Jaime. He basically comes back, there's this scene with him and her, and he thinks that they're gonna get it on, and she's like, no, I don't wanna.
No, you're gross now. Sorry.
Ew, don't touch me with the stump.
Jaime is the only person I think that's really was on Cersei's side because he's so blindly in love with her, and now he's not gonna be in love with her anymore.
So I gave Cersei a -1.
-1
Yeah,
for
'cause
Cersei.
one-
That's being generous.
Right? One, I already don't like you, bitch. And two, you were mean this episode. So -1 for you. You're lucky it's not like -500.
Sansa Stark. I think that Sansa in this episode, especially because, of course she's reeling from her brother being killed and then maimed after he was dead. I think that she is really coming to terms with the fact that she is on her own now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't think she's going to lay down and take it.
No, I don't think so. Not anymore.
So I give points to Sansa this week.
Yep.
Also, we need to really acknowledge the fact that she has an ally.
Yeah.
She does.
And she has an ally that
she-
everyone has already forgotten about completely, and it is Sir Dantos.
Yeah.
And he is no longer a knight at all. He is just a fool, and he is meeting her in secret, and she has an ally.
I stand by my point for Sansa.
Sansa.
Arya Stark.
Arya.
Really good episode for Arya too.
Wow.
This was like a Stark's making a comeback episode.
Yeah.
Arya, we find her out on her adventures with the Hound.
Yep.
She sees two things she wants: her sword back and a horse. She gets both of these things.
I'm gonna give her 2 points.
I say 2 points for
one
Arya.
for the sword and 1 for the horse.
Hell yes.
Should I give her
Hell
3
yes.
for the zinger?
3 for the
Three
zinger.
for the zinger.
Alright, 1 for the horse,
That's a
1 for the sword.
really good zinger.
1 more for the zinger.
A couple of other ladies to appear in this episode that we want to mention. Shay. She cares so much for Sansa, which is such a nice thing to see, and I do feel that that is genuine. However, in her further encounter with Tyrion, not only did she kind of throw a hissy fit, show that she doesn't understand why he would want her to go away, so, she'd be safe, but also she was overheard in their little...
She's not being careful.
No. So,
I already hate that handmaiden, and she doesn't even have a fucking name.
-1,000,000 points for that bitch.
For that handmaiden, -1,000,000.
yeah, but no points for Shay. And one final lady to mention this episode, Brienne of Tarth. She has a really nice moment with Marjorie.
I had put entirely out of my mind the fact that they were both so intimately connected to Renly.
Yes.
Until it was brought up, and then it was just really driven home with me that there is a very, very strong connection. Whether or not Marjorie had feelings for Renly, she knew her brother did. And she loves him very much, and she knew that Brienne had feelings for Renly. And having that reminder of the fact that they're in the Lannister system now, and they've just fallen in with this, of remember the way things were.
I also liked the bit she had with Jaime very briefly where she's like, that's Sansa Stark. You promised your mom that you would do some, that you would handle some shit and you're not doing it. So you need to figure that out now. I'm going to give a point to Brienne of Tarth.
I agree. Let's
I'll give her a
points for Brienne of Tarth. So if you guys want to cast your vote for who you think should receive points in this edition of Game of Thrones, leave it in the comments below, or tweet at us, or write on our Facebook wall. Any means of social media will do. But if you guys write in and comment, we will add the points to our board and show you our standings at the beginning of the episode next week.
Make sure it's ladies handled in the episode.
Yes.
Because, hey man, some of us haven't read the books. Don't
No.
be casting votes for future actions.
Don't cast votes for spoilers.